Dr. Huberman, it's fantastic to have you back on the show. Your insights from our last conversation were mind-blowing. I was diving into your research again, and something struck me, the idea that dopamine is our biological currency. Can you elaborate on what you mean by that?
Absolutely, Alex. Dopamine is indeed a fascinating subject. When we talk about biological currency, we are referring to how dopamine drives our behavior, not just through the experience of pleasure but through motivation and craving. Imagine dopamine as a kind of internal measurement system. It keeps track of our efforts and rewards, and it's involved in the pursuit of goals rather than just the enjoyment of achieving them.
That's intriguing. So dopamine isn't just about the pleasure we get from rewards, it's more about what motivates us to seek those rewards.
Exactly. To illustrate this concept, let's consider a classic experiment. Researchers place two rats in separate cages where each can press a lever to get food. Initially, both rats receive a dopamine boost with each reward. But here's the twist: when dopamine is depleted in one rat, that rat still enjoys the food but shows no motivation to press the lever to get it. This shows us that while dopamine plays a role in the pleasure of rewards, its primary function is to drive motivation.
So, dopamine fuels our drive to seek out rewards and experiences. It's not just about the pleasure of the reward itself?
Precisely. Dopamine is less about the direct pleasure we get from rewards and more about pushing us to pursue new experiences and achievements. It's about the journey towards the goal, the anticipation, and the effort. This internal drive propels us to set new goals and seek out new experiences beyond our current state.
That makes sense. I often hear people say they feel stuck or lack the motivation to pursue their goals. Could this be related to their dopamine levels?
Yes, absolutely. Feeling stuck or unmotivated can often be traced back to dopamine dysregulation. When someone feels they lack energy or drive, it can be due to an imbalance in their dopamine system. Even if they enjoy pleasurable activities, they might struggle to find the motivation to engage in them actively. This is where understanding dopamine can be crucial for finding ways to boost motivation.
Are there specific strategies or habits that can help boost dopamine and enhance motivation?
There are several strategies you can use to positively influence dopamine levels. Regular physical exercise is one of the most effective methods. Exercise can increase dopamine receptor density in the brain, improving motivation and drive. Setting and achieving small, manageable goals can also stimulate dopamine production. Each small win can contribute to a sense of accomplishment and boost motivation. Additionally, engaging in activities that are meaningful or involve learning new skills can be beneficial. The key is to create a positive feedback loop where you are continually challenging yourself and experiencing rewards.
I've noticed that when I set ambitious goals and work towards them, I feel incredibly energized and focused. It's almost like the act of wanting something in the future drives me more than the actual attainment of it.
That's a great observation. The anticipation and effort involved in pursuing goals can be highly stimulating for dopamine. This anticipation often triggers dopamine release, keeping you motivated and engaged. It's not just the end result that's important, it's the journey and the continuous pursuit that can be incredibly energizing. This drive to achieve and seek out new experiences is fundamentally tied to our dopamine system.
It's fascinating how dopamine influences so many aspects of our lives. Can you explain how this applies to different areas like relationships or career goals?
Dopamine is indeed central to various life domains. In relationships, for instance, dopamine can drive the excitement and effort we invest in maintaining and enhancing our connections with others. The anticipation of spending time with a loved one or achieving a meaningful connection can stimulate dopamine release, fostering deeper bonds and more fulfilling relationships. In the workplace, dopamine influences our drive to innovate, excel, and seek out new challenges. It helps us stay motivated and engaged in our work, pushing us to achieve our professional goals and pursue new opportunities. Essentially, dopamine affects our approach to and engagement with different aspects of life by influencing our motivation and reward systems.
Speaking of motivation and engagement, how does dopamine relate to different types of goals and achievements?
Dopamine plays a crucial role in how we set and pursue goals. When we establish a goal, the process of working towards it involves dopamine-driven motivation. This is because dopamine not only helps us feel good about the progress we are making but also keeps us focused and persistent. For example, setting a long-term goal like a career milestone or a personal achievement involves sustained effort and motivation. Dopamine helps to maintain that motivation over time by providing a sense of reward and progress as we move closer to our goal. The feedback loop created by achieving smaller milestones and experiencing the associated dopamine release helps us stay on track and continue working towards larger objectives.
I've heard that certain behaviors or habits can disrupt our dopamine system. What are some of these, and how can we avoid them?
Yes, there are several behaviors that can negatively impact dopamine levels. Chronic stress is one major factor that can deplete dopamine and impair motivation. Stress affects the brain's chemistry, making it harder to maintain a balanced dopamine system. Additionally, excessive consumption of stimulants like drugs or even caffeine can disrupt dopamine regulation. Over-reliance on these substances can lead to imbalances and reduce the effectiveness of natural dopamine production. To support healthy dopamine function, it's important to manage stress effectively, maintain a balanced diet, exercise regularly, and engage in activities that promote well-being and personal growth. By avoiding excessive reliance on stimulants and focusing on healthy habits, you can help maintain a balanced dopamine system.
It seems that maintaining balance is crucial for optimal dopamine function. Are there any specific lifestyle changes or practices that can help improve dopamine regulation?
Yes, there are several lifestyle changes and practices that can help improve dopamine regulation. Incorporating regular physical exercise into your routine is one of the most effective ways to enhance dopamine function. Exercise not only boosts dopamine levels but also increases the number of dopamine receptors in the brain, improving overall motivation and drive. Additionally, practicing mindfulness and stress management techniques, such as meditation or deep breathing exercises, can help regulate dopamine levels and reduce the impact of stress. Engaging in activities that bring joy and satisfaction, such as hobbies, social connections, and creative pursuits, can also positively influence dopamine production. Maintaining a balanced diet with adequate nutrients and avoiding excessive consumption of stimulants or processed foods are also important for supporting healthy dopamine function.
Your insights on dopamine and its impact on motivation are incredibly valuable. I'm curious about how dopamine relates to other neurochemical systems in the brain. Are there any interactions or influences between dopamine and other neurotransmitters?
Yes, dopamine interacts with several other neurotransmitter systems in the brain, creating a complex network of influences. For instance, dopamine works closely with serotonin, another key neurotransmitter involved in mood regulation. The balance between dopamine and serotonin can affect overall emotional well-being and motivation. Additionally, dopamine interacts with norepinephrine, which plays a role in attention and alertness. The interplay between these neurotransmitters helps regulate various aspects of behavior, including focus, mood, and motivation. Understanding these interactions can provide a more comprehensive view of how neurotransmitter systems work together to influence our mental and emotional states.
It's incredible how interconnected our brain systems are. As we wrap up, are there any final thoughts or advice you'd like to share about leveraging dopamine for personal growth and achievement?
One key takeaway is that understanding and harnessing dopamine can significantly impact personal growth and achievement. By becoming aware of how dopamine influences motivation and craving, you can make more informed choices about how to set and pursue your goals. Create a positive feedback loop by setting achievable goals, celebrating small wins, and engaging in activities that challenge and reward you. Maintain a balanced lifestyle with healthy habits, manage stress effectively, and avoid excessive reliance on stimulants. By doing so, you can optimize your dopamine system to enhance motivation, drive, and overall well-being.
I've been reading a fascinating study about how hormones affect behavior, especially in men and women. It's amazing how these chemical messengers can influence everything from parenting roles to attractiveness. Do you know how prolactin plays into this?
Oh, absolutely. Prolactin is quite the interesting hormone. Typically, you think of it as related to breastfeeding and milk production in women, but it also has some pretty intriguing effects on men. For instance, when a father is involved in parenting, he experiences a significant increase in prolactin. This hormone helps him prepare for the challenges of sleepless nights and the physical demands of parenting. It even contributes to what we often call the dad bod because it encourages fat storage. So, it's not just a woman's hormone, it's crucial for men's adjustments too.
That's fascinating. I've also heard that dopamine and prolactin have a sort of rivalry. How does that work?
Yes, dopamine and prolactin do have opposing roles. Dopamine is often associated with pleasure and reward. For example, during the anticipation of sex or a big reward, dopamine levels spike. However, after the experience, prolactin levels increase. This prolactin spike actually induces a refractory period where a man can't mate again immediately, essentially cooling off his arousal. This mechanism helps in balancing the need for recovery and bonding post-reproductive activities.
I find that really interesting. How does this hormonal interplay translate to everyday behaviors and interactions, like, say, the smell of someone's body or their tears?
Great question. There's some compelling research on this. For instance, studies have shown that the scent of a woman's tears can significantly reduce testosterone levels in men. This reaction, published in Science magazine, suggests that even subtle chemical signals can have profound effects on our physiological states. Additionally, people unconsciously exchange chemical signals through smells. This can affect things like attraction and social bonding, though it's a bit controversial how we interpret these pheromone effects in humans.
Wow, that's quite intriguing. So, our senses and hormones are constantly interacting in ways we might not fully realize. What about the idea that men perceive women as more attractive during certain phases of their menstrual cycle?
Yes, exactly. Men are often more attracted to women during the preovulatory phase of their cycle, when their fertility is at its peak. This phase is associated with hormonal changes that make women's sweat and skin smells more appealing to men. Interestingly, women on oral contraception experience different hormonal levels, and men don't perceive the same peak in attractiveness. This shows how sensitive our attraction can be to hormonal changes.
That's incredible. Given all this information about how hormones affect us, are there ways we can intentionally spike or manage dopamine levels for better motivation?
Absolutely. One effective way to manage dopamine is to appreciate the craving itself. When you crave something, it's often the anticipation and striving that bring pleasure. If you learn to find satisfaction in the pursuit, rather than just the end goal, you can maintain higher levels of motivation. This approach aligns with Carol Dweck's growth mindset and also reflects David Goggins' philosophy of finding joy in the struggle.
So, you are saying that the pleasure of craving can be a powerful motivator?
Exactly. It's about enjoying the process rather than just focusing on the reward. Dopamine plays a big role in this. However, there's a catch. If you attach too much expectation to the reward, you might experience a dopamine reward prediction error. This means if the reward doesn't meet your expectations, your dopamine baseline might drop, leading to decreased motivation.
That makes sense. So, how should we manage our expectations to avoid that letdown?
The key is to manage your celebration and expectations. If you achieve a goal, enjoy the win, but don't let it lead to a manic high. Recognize that there will be a natural dip afterward. Allow yourself some time to reset without jumping straight into the next goal. This approach helps balance your dopamine levels and prevents you from getting stuck in a cycle of constant craving and disappointment.
It sounds like a delicate balance between enjoying the moment and preparing for the inevitable dip.
Exactly. It's about understanding that after a peak, there will be a downturn. Instead of seeking immediate gratification, give yourself time to reset. This way, your capacity to engage with dopamine as a motivator remains strong. It's similar to how you've built your company. Understanding the ebb and flow of motivation helps you sustain success over the long term.
This has been really enlightening. I hadn't realized how deeply interconnected our hormonal and motivational systems are. It's amazing how understanding these processes can help us manage our behavior and expectations better.
Absolutely, Anna. The more we understand about these internal systems, the better we can navigate our personal and professional lives. It's all about leveraging that knowledge to optimize how we pursue our goals and handle our everyday interactions.
That's interesting. It makes sense that the key to sustaining success is not just hitting targets but continuously pushing forward. I've noticed this with athletes, academics, and even musicians. They can achieve great things but then experience a big crash. It seems like they've lost touch with their motivation. Why do you think that happens?
Exactly. It's like they lose that initial spark because they don't understand the underlying motivation. This hasn't been thoroughly explained by the neuroscience community until recently. Anna has started talking about this more publicly, and I'm really just echoing her insights. She's pointed out that after experiencing pleasure, you should expect a dip and a craving to return to that pleasurable state. The crucial part is that you have to climb the staircase again. You don't get to just keep ascending in a straight line. It's always up and down, up a little higher, then down again.
I completely get that. It resonates with my own experience. You've essentially outlined what I believe is the single most important loop for success. It's about being fully engaged in the process. What I learned early on, and I'm grateful for this, is similar to what you've described. My early focus was solely on getting rich. That was my goal, day in and day out. I'm here to get rich. I'm showing up to work to get rich.
The more we understand about these internal systems, the better we can navigate our personal and professional lives. It's all about leveraging that knowledge to optimize how we pursue our goals and handle our everyday interactions.
So, I've been thinking a lot about what really drives success and motivation. You know, I've built a pretty successful podcast, and I've come to realize that the key isn't just reaching a goal. It's about the ongoing pursuit. Most people see the reward as the finish line, but the real trick is understanding that the reward is actually in the seeking itself. You get to the finish line, acknowledge it, and then immediately start aiming for the next goal.
That's interesting, Alex. It makes sense that the key to sustaining success is not just hitting targets but continuously pushing forward. I've noticed this with athletes, academics, and even musicians. They can achieve great things but then experience a big crash. It seems like they've lost touch with their motivation. Why do you think that happens?
Exactly. It's like they lose that initial spark because they don't understand the underlying motivation. This hasn't been thoroughly explained by the neuroscience community until recently. Anna has started talking about this more publicly, and I'm really just echoing her insights. She's pointed out that after experiencing pleasure, you should expect a dip and a craving to return to that pleasurable state. The crucial part is that you have to climb the staircase again. You don't get to just keep ascending in a straight line. It's always up and down, up a little higher, then down again.
I completely get that. It resonates with my own experience. You've essentially outlined what I believe is the single most important loop for success. It's about being fully engaged in the process. What I learned early on, and I'm grateful for this, is similar to what you've described. My early focus was solely on getting rich. That was my goal, day in and day out. I'm here to get rich. I'm showing up to work to get rich.
That's a powerful insight. What happened when you were focused solely on that goal?
Well, it didn't work out as I had hoped. My wife pointed out that my obsessive focus on the goal was damaging our marriage. I was so fixated on the end result that nothing else in my life felt integrated. I was doing something I didn't enjoy, all for a goal that might never come. It was a profound realization. I understood that, neurologically speaking, what I really wanted was to feel alive. So, I shifted my focus to simply showing up each day and sincerely pursuing something, even if I might never achieve it. I started to honor and celebrate myself just for trying.
That's such an important shift. Embracing the process and celebrating daily efforts is definitely more sustainable. It prevents you from falling into the trap of thinking that achieving a goal will automatically make you feel good. The craving, the state of wanting, is what actually makes you feel alive.
Exactly. I started using the metaphor of climbing a mountain only to seek the next one. Once I accepted that, I became comfortable with the idea of dropping back down and starting over if necessary. Interestingly, I found that I don't mind the come down. For instance, my last day at Quest was a Monday, and by Tuesday, I was already working on impact theory. I went from managing 3,000 employees to a team of just 7, with no time for deference.
That's a significant transition. How did you handle the change?
It wasn't painful for me because I was so focused on beginning anew. I knew there would be a dip after leaving Quest, and understanding that helped me avoid the downside of reward prediction error. Essentially, if you build up your expectations too high, the result might not meet those expectations, which can be disappointing. On the other hand, if you set more modest expectations, you might end up pleasantly surprised.
Yes, reward prediction error is an important concept. It's about managing expectations to avoid disappointment. I find it fascinating how this ties into dopamine. You mentioned that motivation is like a form of juice. Eastern philosophy talks about QI, which could be compared to dopamine, the drive to pursue and create more of oneself. It's the same universal currency driving human evolution and culture.
That's a great point. Understanding these cycles is crucial. Also, the balance between pain and pleasure is something that intrigues me. The amount of pleasure you eventually experience is often related to the amount of pain you've endured. For example, older experiments showed that people who endured painful electrical shocks eventually experienced pleasure from what was once painful.
That's a fascinating insight. Modern studies have shown similar results. For instance, taking an ice bath is quite painful, but studies have found that after the pain, dopamine levels can rise significantly. This isn't because the cold water releases dopamine directly, but because pain can lead to a heightened state of pleasure afterward.
I've experienced that firsthand. Recently, I tweaked my back, and the pain was quite intense. As it started to subside, I felt a sense of euphoria. It's amazing how the degree of pain can predict the level of pleasure you'll experience. When starting something new and facing challenges, knowing this can be reassuring because it means the eventual success will feel even more rewarding.
Absolutely. And for people who struggle with motivation, it's often because they're getting just enough satisfaction from low-effort activities like social media or binge-watching content. Over time, this can lead to decreased motivation. Dopaminergic drugs can make people intensely focused on their desires, but they create a dependency where only the drug provides that level of dopamine.
And the constant indulgence in things like social media, video games, or food can have an opioid-like effect, where the motivation and craving diminish. This new understanding of dopamine is crucial. It's not the reward itself but the anticipation and pursuit that matter.
Exactly. It's the build-up to the reward that's significant, not the reward itself. Understanding this dynamic can help people stay motivated and engaged in their pursuits. You know, I've been reflecting a lot on how we perceive success and motivation. Many people believe that achieving a goal is the ultimate reward. But I've come to realize that it's not just about reaching the end point, it's more about the journey. What do you think about this?
I completely agree with you. The concept that reaching a goal is the ultimate reward can be quite misleading. In reality, the process of striving towards a goal and the constant pursuit of new challenges is what sustains our motivation. It's almost like the journey itself is the reward, not necessarily the end point.
Absolutely. This perspective makes me think of athletes and musicians who reach the peak of their careers and then face a significant drop. They often experience a high after achieving something significant, but then they crash. This cycle suggests that they might lose touch with the motivation that got them there in the first place.
That's a good observation. The concept of motivation and reward has evolved significantly with advances in neuroscience. Until recently, our understanding was quite limited. Anna's research, for instance, has shed light on how after experiencing a peak of pleasure or achievement, there's often a subsequent low, followed by a craving to reach that peak again. This cyclical nature of motivation is crucial to grasp.
Yes, and understanding this cycle is key to maintaining long-term motivation. It's not about a straight, unbroken ascent but rather a series of highs and lows. Embracing this cyclical nature can be incredibly important for sustained success and satisfaction.
Exactly. When I reflect on my own experiences, I remember a time when I was obsessed with the idea of becoming rich. My focus was solely on achieving financial success, believing that it would be the ultimate reward. But that single-minded obsession led to problems in other areas of my life, including my marriage.
That's a significant realization. It sounds like you had a breakthrough where you understood that the pursuit itself, rather than the end goal, was what made you feel truly alive. Is that right?
Yes, precisely. Shifting my focus from merely achieving an end goal to embracing the daily pursuit of something I was passionate about was transformative. I learned to appreciate the journey itself and to celebrate the process rather than just the outcomes.
That's a powerful perspective. It also highlights the importance of being prepared for the inevitable lows that come after reaching a milestone. If you anticipate these dips, you can manage them better and keep moving forward.
Absolutely. Understanding the concept of reward prediction error is crucial here. For example, if you build up high expectations about a new restaurant, but the experience turns out to be just okay, you might feel disappointed. This happens because your dopamine levels were elevated in anticipation, but the actual experience didn't meet those heightened expectations.
That's a fascinating insight. It makes me think about how ancient philosophies and modern neuroscience can align. For instance, Eastern philosophies often talk about QI or life energy, which can be connected to the concept of dopamine. The drive to achieve and improve, whether it's in personal goals, family life, or cultural contributions, is linked to this universal currency of dopamine.
That's an insightful connection. Dopamine indeed acts as a key driver of motivation. It propels us to pursue goals and overcome challenges. This drive has been a fundamental aspect of human evolution, shaping our behavior and progress as a species for thousands of years.
And speaking of fundamental aspects, let's delve into the role of pain in this process. Pain and pleasure are deeply intertwined. For instance, older experiments demonstrated that after experiencing pain, the release of dopamine can significantly increase, leading to a heightened sense of pleasure once the pain subsides.
Absolutely. The relationship between pain and pleasure is quite fascinating. Research has shown that intense pain can lead to a significant increase in dopamine levels once the pain is over. For instance, studies have found that after a painful ice bath, dopamine levels can rise dramatically, often exceeding baseline levels by a large margin. This effect is not due to the ice bath itself but rather the contrast between the pain experienced and the subsequent relief.
That's a great point. It reminds me of how intense struggles or challenges can make achievements feel even more rewarding. It's almost as if the greater the struggle, the greater the reward. This dynamic can make starting new projects or ventures, even after leaving a successful one, feel invigorating. Exactly. When I transitioned from managing a large company to starting a new venture, the process was challenging, but it wasn't a negative experience. It was invigorating because I was prepared for the ups and downs. The key was to embrace the challenge and use the lessons learned from past experiences to drive forward.
And this approach seems to keep you motivated. Understanding and accepting the cyclical nature of reward and craving can lead to a more fulfilling and sustainable approach to achieving our goals. It's important to remember that the journey and the continuous pursuit are where the real value lies.
Precisely. Embracing the entire cycle of motivation, understanding that pleasure and pain are interconnected, can make the process of pursuing goals more rewarding. Recognizing that the journey itself holds intrinsic value helps maintain motivation and satisfaction over the long term.
To build on that, it's essential to understand how our modern behaviors affect this cycle. For instance, excessive indulgence in instant gratification, like scrolling through social media or binge-watching TV, can disrupt our natural motivation cycles. These activities provide short-term dopamine hits but don't offer the long-term satisfaction that comes from pursuing meaningful goals.
Absolutely. Excessive indulgence in these instant gratifications can lead to a decrease in motivation over time. The short-term dopamine boosts from social media or video games can become less satisfying, leading people to seek more frequent and intense stimulation to achieve the same level of pleasure.
This is why it's important to strike a balance. Engaging in activities that provide immediate gratification can be fine in moderation, but they shouldn't replace or overshadow the pursuit of long-term goals. Finding that balance can help maintain motivation and prevent burnout.
Right. Balancing immediate pleasures with long-term goals is crucial for sustaining motivation. Dopamine plays a significant role in this balance. Understanding how dopamine influences our behavior can help us manage our motivation more effectively and avoid falling into patterns of excessive indulgence.
And to further elaborate, this understanding of dopamine and motivation can be applied to various aspects of life, including personal development, career growth, and even relationships. Recognizing the cyclical nature of motivation and reward can help us navigate these areas more effectively.
Absolutely. In personal development, for example, setting realistic goals and understanding that there will be periods of low motivation can help in maintaining a steady progress. In career growth, acknowledging the cycles of high and low motivation can assist in managing expectations and sustaining long-term commitment. And in relationships, understanding these dynamics can foster better communication and mutual support.
It's clear that integrating this understanding into our daily lives can have a profound impact. By appreciating the journey, anticipating the ups and downs, and managing our dopamine responses, we can achieve a more balanced and fulfilling approach to our goals and challenges.
Indeed. Embracing this holistic view of motivation and reward can lead to a more sustainable and satisfying pursuit of our objectives. It's about finding joy in the process and using our understanding of these dynamics to navigate the highs and lows effectively.
This has been an enlightening discussion. It's clear that understanding the interplay between dopamine, motivation, and reward is crucial for achieving long-term success and satisfaction. By acknowledging and embracing these concepts, we can better manage our motivation and lead more fulfilling lives.
You know, I was diving into some research about dopamine and its impact on our motivation and pleasure, and it's really intriguing how this neurotransmitter influences so many aspects of our lives. Dopamine isn't just about feeling good when we receive a reward, it's also crucial in driving us to achieve goals and pursue new experiences. How do you see dopamine affecting our daily lives?
Absolutely, dopamine plays a central role in our brain's reward system. It's involved in a variety of functions, from regulating mood and motivation to reinforcing behaviors that lead to positive outcomes. When we achieve something or anticipate a reward, dopamine levels rise, making us feel pleasure and satisfaction. This evolutionary mechanism is designed to motivate us to pursue activities that enhance our chances of survival and reproduction.
That makes sense. But in today's world, our environment has drastically changed compared to what it was during our evolutionary past. With the advent of modern technology and instant gratification, like social media and on-demand entertainment, how do you think these changes impact our dopamine system?
The modern environment presents both opportunities and challenges for our dopamine system. On one hand, these technologies provide unprecedented access to instant rewards. Social media platforms, for example, offer a constant stream of notifications, likes, and content that can rapidly boost dopamine levels. On the other hand, this constant stimulation can disrupt our natural dopamine balance and reward pathways.
So, it's not just about the immediate pleasure we get from these activities, but also about how they affect our ability to find satisfaction in other aspects of life. For instance, I've read that the problem isn't necessarily with the pleasures themselves, but with experiencing pleasure without any prior effort or achievement. Can you elaborate on this?
Exactly. The key issue is that pleasure experienced without effort or pursuit can lead to a state where our dopamine system becomes overstimulated. This overstimulation can cause a decrease in motivation because the brain gets used to the constant high levels of pleasure. When everything is easily accessible, it diminishes the value of the rewards we receive from pursuing goals or completing tasks. This can lead to a decrease in overall satisfaction and motivation.
It sounds like there's a delicate balance between enjoying rewards and pursuing them. If we celebrate our achievements too intensely or too frequently, it could potentially backfire. There's a concept that the pursuit of a goal should be more rewarding than the actual celebration. How does that work?
That's a crucial concept. The idea is that the process of pursuing a goal should be more fulfilling than the actual moment of achievement. If the celebration of a win is too intense and provides too much dopamine-driven pleasure, it can lead to a crash afterward. This crash occurs because the brain becomes accustomed to the high level of stimulation and may struggle to find pleasure in everyday activities. By keeping celebrations more reflective and less intense, we maintain a more stable dopamine balance, which helps sustain motivation over the long term.
That makes a lot of sense. It's almost like a feedback loop where the pursuit needs to be rewarding enough to maintain motivation, but not so much that the celebration overshadows the process. This concept seems particularly relevant in our modern age where instant gratification is so prevalent.
Absolutely. The prevalence of instant gratification can create a cycle where we become less motivated to engage in activities that require effort. For example, the constant availability of entertainment and pleasure through digital media can reduce our capacity for delayed gratification. This is particularly problematic when we consider the rise in substance abuse and dependence on medications that artificially boost dopamine levels.
Speaking of substance abuse, there's been a noticeable increase in the misuse of prescription medications like Adderall and Ritalin. These drugs, originally intended for conditions like ADHD, are often used recreationally or to enhance performance. How do these substances fit into the discussion about dopamine?
Medications like Adderall and Ritalin affect dopamine levels in the brain. They are stimulants that increase dopamine activity, which can improve focus and attention in individuals with ADHD. However, when used recreationally or without a medical need, they can create significant problems. The increased dopamine activity can lead to a cycle of dependency where users need more of the substance to achieve the same effects. This misuse can narrow the range of pleasurable activities and increase the risk of addiction.
It's clear that addiction plays a major role in this discussion. I've heard it described as a progressive narrowing of the things that bring you pleasure. In contrast, a fulfilling life is seen as one where there's a progressive expansion of pleasurable experiences. How does this differentiation impact our understanding of addiction versus a balanced life?
Addiction is characterized by a narrowing of interests and a dependence on specific sources of pleasure, often leading to a limited range of activities that can bring joy. This is in stark contrast to a fulfilling life, which involves expanding one's range of enjoyable activities and finding pleasure through diverse experiences. In a balanced life, pleasure comes not only from instant rewards but also from the satisfaction of achieving goals through effort and perseverance. Understanding this distinction is important for addressing addiction and promoting well-being.
That's a profound way to look at it. It seems like the key is to cultivate a variety of fulfilling activities and to maintain a balance between immediate pleasures and long-term goals. But with the rapid changes in our environment, especially with digital media, how can people learn to self-regulate their dopamine levels?
Self-regulation is crucial in today's environment. One approach is to become more aware of how different activities affect your dopamine levels. For instance, monitoring how much time you spend on social media or engaging in instant gratification activities can help. Setting boundaries and creating periods of digital detox can help reset your dopamine system. Additionally, incorporating activities that require effort and provide a sense of achievement, such as hobbies or exercise, can help maintain a balanced dopamine level.
That sounds like a practical approach. Education about these mechanisms can also be very empowering. By understanding how dopamine works, people can make more informed choices about their behaviors and manage their own well-being more effectively.
Definitely. Knowledge about dopamine and its impact on behavior can help individuals recognize when their dopamine system is out of balance. For example, if someone is feeling unmotivated or down, understanding that it might be due to an overstimulated dopamine system can lead to strategies for recovery, such as taking breaks from high-stimulation activities and engaging in activities that provide a more gradual and sustained release of dopamine.
And it's not just about managing pleasure and motivation. This understanding extends to how we experience time and significant events. For instance, dopamine plays a role in how we segment our experiences over time. Can you explain more about this?
Yes, dopamine is involved in how we segment time by marking significant events in our lives. For example, when watching a sports game, every significant event, such as a missed shot or a score, can create a small burst of dopamine. This helps us distinguish and remember these moments. Interestingly, dopamine also affects our perception of time through our blinking rate. Research has shown that higher levels of dopamine can lead to less frequent blinking and can influence how we perceive time.
That's a fascinating connection. It shows how deeply intertwined dopamine is with our perception and memory. It's amazing how a neurotransmitter can impact so many aspects of our daily lives, from motivation and pleasure to time perception.
Absolutely. Understanding these connections can provide valuable insights into how we navigate modern challenges and manage our own well-being. By recognizing the role of dopamine in various aspects of our lives, we can better address issues related to motivation, addiction, and overall mental health.
It's clear that a comprehensive understanding of dopamine and its effects can help us make more informed decisions and lead a more balanced life. From managing instant gratification to fostering a variety of rewarding activities, there are many ways we can apply this knowledge to improve our well-being.
Exactly. The more we learn about these mechanisms, the better equipped we are to handle the complexities of modern life. Whether it's through self-regulation, education, or understanding our biological responses, we can use this knowledge to enhance our overall quality of life and maintain a healthier, more balanced approach to pleasure and motivation.
I've been diving into some fascinating research about how our brain chemicals, especially dopamine, affect our perception of time. It's intriguing how something as abstract as time can be influenced by something as concrete as dopamine levels. Can you explain how dopamine impacts our experience of time?
Absolutely. Dopamine is a crucial neurotransmitter involved in many brain functions, including how we perceive time. Essentially, dopamine helps regulate our internal clock. When our dopamine levels are high, our sense of time tends to speed up, making time seem to fly by. Conversely, when dopamine levels are low, time can feel like it's dragging on. This is because dopamine is linked to our ability to anticipate and experience rewards, which influences how we measure and experience the passage of time.
That's really interesting. So, when we are excited or stressed, our dopamine levels change and that affects how we perceive time. For example, during a thrilling event or a stressful situation, time can seem to slow down. Is this because dopamine works in conjunction with other neurotransmitters like norepinephrine?
Exactly. When we are in high-stress situations or experiencing excitement, both dopamine and norepinephrine, also known as adrenaline, are elevated. Norepinephrine heightens our alertness and arousal, which makes us more aware of our surroundings and can cause time to feel like it's slowing down. This is why, during moments of intense stress or excitement, like in a car accident, people often report that everything seemed to move in slow motion. The heightened arousal from these neurotransmitters makes our brains process information more quickly and with greater detail.
It's amazing how our brain can alter our perception of time so drastically based on our emotional state. But how does this concept apply to our everyday lives? I mean, in the context of modern distractions and technology, how does our constant exposure to digital media affect our dopamine levels and, consequently, our perception of time?
Modern technology has a significant impact on our dopamine levels. Digital media, with its constant notifications and instant gratification, leads to frequent dopamine spikes. This constant stimulation can disrupt our natural dopamine regulation, making it harder to focus on tasks that require longer periods of concentration. For example, people often find it difficult to engage in activities like reading a book or working on a project for an extended time without being distracted by their phones or social media. This constant need for immediate rewards can lead to a distorted perception of time, where time spent on these activities seems to pass quickly, while time spent on less stimulating tasks feels much longer.
That makes sense. It seems like our constant engagement with digital media can lead to a form of time distortion. I've heard that our environment and behaviors can also influence our dopamine system. For instance, bright light exposure at night has been shown to impact dopamine levels. Can you explain how this works?
Yes, bright light exposure at night can interfere with our dopamine system. Our bodies have a natural circadian rhythm that helps regulate sleep-wake cycles, and this rhythm is influenced by light exposure. When we are exposed to bright light, especially blue light from screens, late at night, it can disrupt the production of melatonin, a hormone that helps regulate sleep. This disruption can affect dopamine levels because melatonin and dopamine are closely linked in the brain's reward system. Bright light at night can lead to lower dopamine levels, which can negatively impact our mood, energy levels, and overall sense of well-being.
It seems like managing our light exposure is crucial for maintaining a healthy dopamine balance. I've also heard that our sense of time and our dopamine levels are linked to our sleep patterns. How does sleep, or lack thereof, affect dopamine and time perception?
Sleep is essential for maintaining a healthy dopamine balance. During sleep, our brain goes through several stages, including REM sleep, which is crucial for processing information and consolidating memories. Poor sleep can lead to imbalanced dopamine levels, making it harder to regulate mood and time perception. For instance, when we don't get enough sleep, we might experience increased irritability and difficulty concentrating, which can make time feel like it's dragging. Conversely, oversleeping or irregular sleep patterns can also disrupt dopamine levels and impact our ability to keep track of time accurately.
This highlights the importance of good sleep hygiene in managing dopamine levels and time perception. I'm curious, have you noticed any personal experiences or experiments that illustrate how fluctuations in dopamine affect our ability to perceive time?
Actually, I've had a personal experience with this. There was a period when I had an uncanny ability to accurately estimate the time, even without checking a clock. It felt like a superpower. I could predict the time to within a few minutes, which was quite impressive. However, after some time, that ability faded, and now I can only estimate time within a larger window. This change is likely related to fluctuations in my dopamine levels. During that period, my dopamine release might have been very regular, which allowed me to have a more precise internal clock. Over time, irregularities in dopamine release disrupted this accuracy.
That's a fascinating example. It really shows how sensitive our internal timekeeping can be to changes in dopamine levels. Are there any specific strategies or habits that can help maintain a more consistent dopamine level and, by extension, a more accurate sense of time?
Yes, there are several strategies that can help. First, maintaining a regular routine can stabilize dopamine levels. This includes having consistent sleep and wake times, as well as regular meal and exercise schedules. Engaging in activities that provide balanced rewards, rather than constant immediate gratification, can also help. For instance, setting long-term goals and working steadily towards them can provide a steady release of dopamine, rather than relying on frequent short-term rewards. Additionally, practicing mindfulness and meditation can help regulate dopamine levels and improve overall time perception.
These are practical and actionable strategies. It's clear that maintaining a healthy lifestyle and being mindful of our habits can have a significant impact on our dopamine levels and time perception. I've also heard about the concept of the rich kid effect, where individuals from wealthy backgrounds might struggle with dopamine regulation. Can you explain this phenomenon?
The rich kid effect refers to the idea that individuals who grow up in affluent environments might struggle with dopamine regulation due to their lack of exposure to challenges and effort. In evolutionary terms, our brains are wired to seek rewards and experiences that involve effort and overcoming obstacles. When people, especially children, are provided with everything they want without having to work for it, their dopamine systems might not develop the same way. This can lead to difficulties in finding satisfaction and pleasure in life as they grow older. They might seek out more extreme experiences or develop addictive behaviors to achieve the same level of dopamine stimulation that they got easily in their youth.
That's an interesting perspective. It seems like challenges and effort play a crucial role in healthy dopamine regulation. What about the impact of modern behaviors on our dopamine systems? For example, excessive social media use and instant gratification seem to be prevalent today. How do these behaviors affect our dopamine levels?
Modern behaviors like excessive social media use and the pursuit of instant gratification can significantly impact our dopamine levels. Social media platforms are designed to provide constant rewards through likes, comments, and notifications, which can lead to frequent dopamine spikes. This constant stimulation can desensitize our dopamine receptors, making it harder to find pleasure in less stimulating activities. Over time, this can lead to a cycle where we need more frequent or more intense stimulation to achieve the same level of satisfaction, which can impact our overall well-being and time perception.
It sounds like managing our engagement with technology is crucial for maintaining a healthy dopamine balance. Are there any specific habits or practices you recommend to mitigate the negative effects of modern distractions?
Definitely. One effective habit is to set boundaries for technology use. For example, designating specific times for checking social media and avoiding screens before bedtime can help regulate dopamine levels and improve sleep quality. Additionally, taking regular breaks from technology, such as having tech-free hours or days, can help reset your dopamine system. Engaging in activities that require effort and provide long-term rewards, such as exercise, hobbies, or creative projects, can also help maintain a healthy dopamine balance.
These strategies seem practical and manageable. By setting boundaries and incorporating balanced activities into our routines, we can better regulate our dopamine levels and improve our overall well-being. I've been trying to figure out how to manage my mornings better. I've heard that looking at your phone right after waking up isn't the best for you. Can you explain why that is?
The issue with looking at your phone first thing in the morning is that it interrupts a critical period for your brain. After you wake up, especially from REM sleep, your brain has been processing and sorting emotional and logistical information throughout the night. This process is called neuroplasticity, and it's especially active during the second half of your sleep cycle.
Oh, that makes sense. So, if you look at your phone right away, you are missing out on this important mental work?
Exactly. When you wake up, you are in a prime position to integrate all the emotional and cognitive work your brain did overnight. But if you dive straight into sensory experiences like scrolling through your phone, you might miss out on this crucial information processing.
Interesting. So, how does this relate to how we handle emotional stress?
Well, during REM sleep, your brain deals with emotional experiences by placing them in proper perspective. It helps you deal with stress and sort through your emotions. For instance, a negative comment you read on social media might not seem as significant after a good night's sleep because your brain has already worked through it.
That's really fascinating. I guess it's why some people feel so overwhelmed if they don't get enough sleep. They haven't had the chance to process their emotions properly.
Exactly. Lack of sleep can make you more irritable and stressed because your brain hasn't had the chance to manage those emotional experiences. That's why it's beneficial to let yourself wake up slowly and avoid immediately diving into your phone or other stimulating activities.
I've been trying to implement a no-phone rule for the first hour after waking up, but I find it challenging. You mentioned you also struggle with this sometimes?
Yes, I do. It's tough because our phones are designed to be highly engaging and addictive. I've set a goal to avoid my phone for the first 60 minutes after waking up, but I don't always succeed. It's a struggle because, like everyone else, I get tempted to check notifications.
So, what strategies do you use to overcome that temptation?
One strategy I'm considering is a challenge where I would turn off my phone during every odd hour of the day. This means I would only use it during even hours. The idea is to see if a rigid schedule like this helps me manage my phone use better.
That's an interesting approach. Do you think it'll help with your productivity and focus?
I hope so. The idea is that by removing the phone during odd hours, I can create more space for focused work and reflection. Sometimes, strict schedules can be beneficial because they force us to develop discipline and manage our time better.
I've heard you work an average of 93 hours a week. How do you manage such a demanding schedule?
Yes, I do work a lot, but it's actually quite joyful for me. When I start working more than 93 hours, it usually means I'm juggling too many things, which can disrupt my sleep. I've developed a trick to help with this. If I wake up in the middle of the night, I use 2 pairs of AirPods to play a fiction audiobook at a low volume. This helps me fall back asleep quickly.
That's a clever technique. So, the background noise helps you fall back asleep by diverting your brain's focus?
Exactly. The low-level noise of the audiobook provides just enough distraction to help my brain switch from problem-solving mode to relaxation mode. It's effective in letting me get back to sleep without the stress of being awake in the middle of the night.
I've heard that waking up in the middle of the night is actually normal. Is there anything people should know about managing this?
Yes, it is quite normal to wake up during the night. What's important is how you respond. A common issue is the feeling of having too much energy right before bedtime. This is often a natural surge in alertness and can be followed by a dip, making it harder to fall asleep if you go to bed too late.
So, adjusting your bedtime to align better with your natural sleep rhythms could help?
Exactly. Going to bed earlier can help because it aligns better with your melatonin release cycle. If you push bedtime too late, your melatonin levels drop, which can make it harder to fall asleep and stay asleep.
These strategies seem practical and manageable. By setting boundaries and incorporating balanced activities into our routines, we can better regulate our dopamine levels and improve our overall well-being. This discussion has been incredibly insightful. Thank you for sharing your knowledge on dopamine, time perception, and the effects of modern behaviors.
You are welcome. I'm glad we could explore these topics together. Understanding how dopamine and time perception work can help us make more informed choices and lead a healthier, more balanced life. If you have any more questions or want to discuss further, feel free to reach out.